Hello and welcome to Tuesday, October 8th, 2024, where we are focused with a live audience on a digital world town hall meeting. Today, the meeting will be focused on crazy stuff, including dialogue around what's happening with the weather, but primarily focused on some of the advancements, as well as just open general Q&A for the last week. We're grateful for those hosts that are joining us. Terrence is not with us, but Elle and Wally are, like consistent. As a reminder, this is a private membership association. For those that are not aware of what that is, we can go through it. Some of the things we'll talk about may be forward-looking. Primarily topics are around how secret combinations are basically taking over certain systems or verticals and then working together to take over governments. And then once they take over governments, they take over the monetary systems, and then they control all the other elements because he who creates the money creates the rules. Decentralization is really the solution to that. And I'm not talking about centralizing decentralization like Litecoin and Bitcoin does with different environments. For instance, I went to an event here in Utah, had about 80 folks that was all focused around decentralized finance. And literally 80-90% of the whole event is all around how they're basically wrapping things up. For instance, Chainlink was here. When I say wrapping it up, I'm talking about taking public keys that are in a decentralized architecture and then linking them together and using machine learning or artificial intelligence to basically track and trace it. True decentralized systems is the actual solution to this nightmare that we're all seeing within society. So really, it's all about finding a nice balance. It's not being way to the right, way to the left, way in the centralized world or decentralized world, but how can decentralization actually get adopted within humanity and at the same time provide anonymity or privacy to people so they can actually operate in a different environment in the future where their identity and data is actually theirs and they can prove who they are. One of the ways is through using cryptography, so basically 12 words that tie to a key, a master private key that then has other derived keys that tie to it. That's the core of what the digital world enables through the service providers. Some of the companies are the clear companies. The big topics of this week is really just hurricanes, the devastation that has happened across the southeast part of the United States of America and the lives every day that are being lost. It's also nice to see how Americans come together and how they care for one another. It's sickening and sad to see some of the, not just the devastation, but how the response is supposedly happening and the things that are happening there. We're getting close to elections. We're seeing how really monetary systems are becoming weak and fragmented. And for those that are not aware, the Bitcoin infrastructure was actually brought to humanity in 2009 after the collapse of Lehman Brothers. So the insurance and reinsurance environment around really asset-backed mortgages. So 2007, 2008, when you saw that collapse, and it was just ridiculous. So it's like, how can we actually have individuals control their assets and identity? And it really wasn't looked at from long-term scale. I believe the original model included transactions that could actually transact in real time globally. But what you're seeing are future change that can do that. The problem is most of them work off of speculation. It's hyping some coins so people come into it, and then some people get rich and others don't. That's not what this is about for humanity. If we're going to pull together like what's happening within this environment with multiple, last I heard there were 12 different storms that were brewing. Pieces of today's call will be around how could this happen? Is this man-made? Is it just natural? Is it because of global warming, et cetera, et cetera? But that's not the basis of what decentralization is. But when we talk about systems around what you're seeing with these hurricanes, we're talking about systems that can actually link from the current system with lack of transparency. For instance, when folks said we need help, we had people that were supposedly elected or selected saying there's no money. They create it out of nothing and literally send it all around the world. I'm not saying that it's not needed, but all I'm saying is we're on one earth with one people. And the sooner that we realize that borders and countries and kingdoms and principalities and nations are all governed under one ecosystem. And yes, we could call this Mother Nature, but when we start digging into some of the things underneath it, we'd really have to question that. So when you talk about money, real money in the future as well as in the past was tied to two primary classes, silver and gold. One of the advancements that we've been able to accomplish over this last week is really linking the ability to actually procure silver and gold physically, have it serialized, and then converted into digital-based assets within certain regions, certain countries. There's tons of countries out there that historically have had coins, and then the next thing you know, the digital dollar comes out, and then the crypto dollar comes out. And then the lack of all of the control behind it dissipates, kind of like what we've seen when we see these cyclones or hurricanes. For those that are not aware, cyclones south of the equator, I went through 2 Category 5 last year in Vanuatu with my family. It was an amazing experience. We actually got on 4-wheelers, drove around right in the eye of it, and for those that care, I can even provide some of that. But the devastation that comes behind these 165 mile an hour winds, this particular one that's heading for Florida tomorrow is 175 currently. So what we're talking about is monetary systems in the future and advancements within those. And I look forward to showing you more as this next week transpires. One of the other big things that we'll be talking about, not in depth, but at a high level, is the opportunity to work with the country of Ethiopia. And currently we're engaging in a process to explore potentials, as well as it's much more than explore. It's actually go to market, and with a pilot. There is a lot that needs to be done with engaging the actual country, but the country itself has actually taken the fortitude and steps to stand up and to be able to unite its people using decentralized systems, as well as enabling identity, voting, finance, and many other things. One of the other ones that we don't touch on within the digital world around education, but we're grateful for some of those that have taken the fortitude to actually live their lives in accordance to their roots. Now, this is draft. You'll see images. For instance, some of these images may not be exact, but what you'll see is the future of a system that could be stood up in a very short period of time. And hopefully we have a little bit more advancements on this next week. But around identity, certificates, permits, any things that basically are regulated by governments within a particular region. This particular is birth certificates, adoption certificates, marriage certificates, driver's licenses, as well as digital and physical, and death certificates. There's also some other elements around permitting as well. There's ties to health and how health actually touches multiple different environments. It should not be based on Clear Cellular. I don't know why that's in there, but voting is another element. Financial management and how they've got their own currency and how that actually ties to an environment. We'll talk a little bit about that in the coming months or weeks. And then how businesses are created and assets are managed. Also how land can be managed from a cryptographic standpoint, but from the whole world. And when we talk about that, we're talking about not just one country or one city or province or town or county, but the whole world and how it can actually plug into it. How currencies and ecosystems can link together. So how the silver and the gold that we talked about can not only come from a foil standpoint, but also from a coin standpoint. And then how identity can come together around an individual actually owning their own identity. For instance, we've already seen this roll out in a very closed environment in Nigeria, so on the other side of the African continent, but they did it all from a centralized standpoint. So they basically said, you're going to take your physical ID, like a driver's license, and then your payment, so like a Visa or a MasterCard, and you're going to link them together inside of one ID, and then you're going to download an app on your phone, and then you're going to synchronize that app with that ID, and then they're basically going to centrally control. And the people that stood up and said, we see what you're doing, we don't want that. And the next thing you know, the cellular companies come out and say, if you haven't done it, then we're shutting you off. We're shutting your phone number off. So a country, Nigeria, that tells its cellular providers, this is what you're going to do. And then they follow through with it. And the next thing you see is massive riots within the streets, the database hacked into, and it changed. That's Nigeria. Ethiopia is doing a very different thing where they're potentially giving the identity and data to the actual citizens and then wrapping it with others. Now, a lot of the things we're talking about, again, are forward-looking content, but it's important for us to voice this as the world needs to see from a security standpoint. Ethiopian Life, as well as American Life, as well as Mexican Life, are currently in the build process. And then potential around an Ethiopian phone, which is a whole nother conversation, which we won't talk on. So those being touched on, I won't jump into the next topic until we have any kind of feedback or thoughts on what we've discussed prior. If we don't have prompt ones, then we'll go ahead and just jump to the next topic. But any thoughts or feedback or observations based upon what's already been reported out on? Go ahead, Phoenix.
Hey, Michael. I'm just curious about the digital world and when you expect for the, like, let's say we do a SEC filing or some type of registration. What is the estimated date for that to be recognized worldwide or even domestically, as opposed to filing out a piece of paper, sending it in? When are we expecting the digital world to be recognized fully?
So I think there's a couple things that are spinning. I can tell you that the chairman of NASDAQ, which is a New York Stock Exchange, and I have spent lots of time over the years. He actually flew out and was supposed to stay half a day, ended up 2 days, ended up being 11 days total. And on the second day, he says, this is the most advanced business I've ever seen in my life. And and he runs Clearphones, his child runs Clearphones. But ultimately, that is what I would call the fiat stock exchange. The New York Stock Exchange is a good example of a fiat exchange. I believe all currencies, equities, and commodities will actually go fully digital. And in the state of Texas, you're seeing one that's already being stood up. The sad thing is it's funded to $100 million through BlackRock already. And so you'll see other environments that will be that regulatory body be in front of the Security and Stock SEC, basically. And the SEC and then these different exchanges really are the ones that will define whether they're actually going to tie it into the existing system. What I can show you, what I'll do is I'll open up, I'll actually log into this environment here. So I'll actually show you how it works within this new digital environment. So what I'm doing, for those that may be new to this experience, I'm logging into an app on my phone. There can only be one Life app on phone. And what it's doing is it's actually linking a browser extension and system to a phone with verification, and then it basically uses no usernames, no passwords to log in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into a business, and I'm actually going to create let's see, I'm going to find one that already has an asset that's created. So this one already has an asset. So let's go ahead and find that. But do you see this get listed right here? This get list is where the actual linkages within the assets will actually tie. Maybe I can give you a better example.
Are we supposed to be seeing something?
Yeah, we're not seeing your screen, Mike.
Okay, sorry. Oh no, I didn't do any of them. That's terrible. Here, let me,
Yeah, we were wondering.
I wish you would have said, I wish somebody would have said something. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Okay. So now you should be able to see the screen. So let me run back through some of these things that maybe we should literally, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart here because that's moderators. That's all you got to do.